Hey guys, it's Graham. Welcome back to The Midnight Ride. The cool thing about starting a new YouTube channel is that it can be about whatever I want it to be. And even though most of the videos I've done so far have been about movies, well, I can just put whatever I want on here. A couple of days ago, a friend of mine reached out with questions about training for a Tough Mudder. There's one that's coming up into her area later this year, and she's never done one before. And by her own admittance, I'm not doxing anybody here. I'm just gonna say, like, she's not in shape for one, and events like this are often a good excuse to really train hard, to have something towards which to work. She asked me about the training regimen for it, and I've got some experience in that area because I have done 5 of these mud runs. I've done 3 Tough Mudders and 2 Spartan races. And so here's a bit of a summary of my experience with these, but especially with the first one, because that was the one that required the most effort to get into shape. So 2012, I had a friend in Arizona. This is when I was living in Las Vegas, and he told me that there was a Tough Mudder coming to Vegas in October of that year. He'd done one before. He wanted to do another one. That was going to be the next one that was close to both of us. So I started training in January, and for the first time in my life, I started counting calories. Now, I've been generally athletic for most of my life, but I did notice that once I hit my mid-20s, it started to stick to me a little bit more, and especially when I got married. My wife's a good cook. She's also from a large family, and so cooking for just 2 people was something hard for her to figure out. So whenever it was time to make waffles, she's like, "Oh, I'll just make a batch of waffles." And we have like 28 waffles lying around the house. Like, okay. And she also likes to put peanut butter on her waffles, and so I'm sitting here packing down carbs and peanut butter, and hey, surprise, I put on 15 pounds the first year that we were married. I had never been 220 pounds before. I did not want to be 220 pounds, so I had to start monitoring my intake. That is the first step. It's amazing how often I have forgotten that over the years. I often think that, oh, well, there must be some other gimmick if I've got to do paleo or intermittent fasting or protein heavy or whatever. I think that might be the hack. No, like, the majority of it just comes down to how much you're consuming. It's not fun. It's not sexy. It is effective. And whenever I've seriously and consistently lost weight, it's because I have also diligently monitored what I am eating in terms of quality and, more importantly, quantity. And so I had to start counting the calories and everything. I would have oatmeal and a little bit of milk, a little bit of sugar in there, like brown sugar, for breakfast, and some fruit. Breakfast was usually about 400 calories. I'm 6'1", and like I said, at the time I was 220. I set my goal weight and I said, okay, if you have a calorie deficit of this much every single day, then by this amount of time you'll reach your target weight of whatever it is. And I was like, well, I want to lose 30 pounds. I've been a runner before, and 190 is a comfortable weight for me to do distance running. So 2012, I started running and doing more aerobic style exercise, because if you're unfamiliar with what a Tough Mudder is, it is an 8 to 13 mile run with about 24 obstacles spread out throughout it, like military style stuff. You're crawling through the mud, you're crawling through pipes, you're climbing things, you're jumping, you're swimming. It's intense, and the pace is kind of one that you set yourself. They've got competitors that do it, but you do it as well as you can. You don't have to be sprinting the entire time, and the distance itself is its own obstacle. So I had to do some serious distance running, but I also had to get good at the aerobic side of things. I had to be able to climb stuff. I had to be able to crawl through mud fields and do all of that. And so it would require a lot of cardiovascular endurance. So in addition to the calorie intake monitoring, I was also exercising a lot more. Now, here's one thing that was massively key, and that is why I have never been able to really duplicate the success that I had during that training for 2012. At the time, I had a 9-to-5 job. Having a steady and predictable schedule was one of the biggest helps, and it's also one of the biggest reasons why I'm not really able to do it as swiftly and effectively now, because I've got this graveyard schedule. I've got a whole bunch of other variables in my life At the time, my wife was pregnant with our oldest. Now we have 3 kids. And I also wasn't doing CDL style work. I was mostly sitting at a desk. I would spend a couple of hours a day on my feet working stuff manually. But other than that, the calorie burn of my day job was very low. And so the main source of expenditure was my workout sessions. But because of that stability in the schedule and the lack of people depending on my time, I could get up in the morning at 6, drive over to the gym, meet with my brother. We'd lift weights in the morning, and then I'd go to work. I worked with my brother and do my 9 to 5 stuff. My wife also worked with us, so that was a pretty sweet gig for a while there in terms of the schedule. And then drive home at 5. She'd start making dinner. We'd have dinner, and then after dinner, I'd go do cardio, usually for about a half hour to 45 minutes. We lived in an apartment complex that had a gym in there. And so 4 nights a week, I would spin on the bike for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then the other 2 nights, I would go out and I would hit the pavement. Now, why didn't I run more if I was training for a run? Well, I am blessed with the body that does not like to run. And no matter what I did, shin splints came along pretty regularly. This was also exacerbated by the fact that, 2012, this was only 3 years after I had a motorcycle crash where I tore up my leg, and I didn't know it at the time, but I had damaged the muscle that connects to the bone. It was called, the doctor called it an anterior shin splint. I guess there are 2 layers. You can have a top layer and a bottom layer, and the bottom layer one is going to give you more trouble, and that's what I ended up having. As I added more miles over the months to my running, that shin splint got agitated, and it got to a point where it hurt to walk on it. And so I was doing more cardio to keep my heart rate tolerant of the workload, but that was all on the bike, and that wasn't really going to simulate the difficulty of the run. When I went to the doctor, this was about 6 weeks before the Tough Mudder in October, he's like, yeah, no, you're going to miss that event. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. It was interesting to see the difference between what the doctor said, and then I go to the PT bros, and they're like, no, bro, we'll totally have you ready for this event. I did 6 weeks of PT, and lo and behold, they got me to a point between the stretching and the focal exercises where I was able to mitigate that pain and make it go away, and I was able to go do the run. I did not look forward to my weekly stretch and beating sessions, though, at the actual clinic. Like, I had to do exercises at home, then I had to go in once a week for them to monitor and intensify my regiment. And there was this little girl, I swear she was like half my body mass, who she must have been like just trained in the art of make patient feel pain, with a smiley little bubbly look on her face. And she's like, all right, well, let me know if it hurts too much. And I'm like, I can't do this little freaking girl that she's beating the crap out of my legs. She'd work on it, and I'd just sit there and take it. But whatever pain fu magic she did, it ended up working and fixing my leg. But that had a lot to do with why I just did the running on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and then I would come home, shower all that sweat off, and I'd still have plenty of time to spend with my wife. Now it would be a lot more difficult to do that, but give it another year or two and my son will be old enough to go on longer runs with me, and my schedule will be a little bit different. I might take that up again. I actually enjoy running. We'll see if he wants to. But the cardio burn was key. I mean, I could burn 500 or 600 calories on a run. I would burn about 300 or 400 spinning the bike. It's less, like it's good for your heart, but the lessened impact means that you're just exerting a little bit less energy. But between the 30 minutes of weightlifting in the morning before work, and then monitoring the food intake, and then doing a lot of hard cardio, I wasn't trying to have like a 1,000 calorie deficit every day. That's actually going to throw you out of whack. You want to have about negative 200 on average. But between that and just the fact that I went from sedentary to very athletic all of a sudden, and like really did the hard counting, I lost 20 pounds in the first 2 months of doing that. The next 10 pounds came off over the next 2 months. Like you get a rate of diminishing returns. But overall, I lost about between 33 and 35 pounds. There were times when the scale said 222 when I was starting out. By the time I finished, the lowest I got was about to 187. But I lost that weight, and I wasn't really trying to put on muscle. I was trying to stay light and stay lean and just be strong. and develop some slow twitch endurance and go from there. But effectively, the key was I was working out twice a day. I don't think you have to go that intense, but if you do 30 to 45 minutes of good elevated heart rate cardio a day, and you have a caloric deficit of about 200 calories a day, and you sustain that over the course of a couple of months, it's going to require you to schedule that, to be dialed in, and to be disciplined. Then you'll see that difference. You'll lose that extra weight that you're hauling around, and you're going to want to put in at least one day a week of like hard feet on the ground cardio. Get a good pair of running shoes. You can get a good pair for between $50 and $70, and the soles on them will last. We'll say we'll ballpark it around 150 miles. So you're going to beat the soles off of a pair of trainers before your event, but you do all that and you should be set. You're going to want to work in some isometric and body weight exercises. Do your push-ups and your sit-ups and your body weight squats and things like that to focus the muscle, and also give yourself time to recover. You're stretching after your exercises. You definitely take Sundays off. Alternate your isometric days, but you're going to want to do some form of cardio every day. And that's what got me in shape to be able to finish my first Tough Mudder. Now, on 2 of the 5 mud runs that I've done, I ended up like really having bad stomach cramps because I hydrated very poorly on those 2 runs. Consequently, those are the 2 runs that I did with my friend April Lynn. And after the second one, she's like, I just don't think your body can handle it. It's like, no, you should have seen me on the other one. Like, I did the other 2 just fine. It's just that whenever you're around, apparently I don't drink enough. But hydration is key. Water and some electrolytes. You don't want to overdo it on the electrolytes either, but stay hydrated to avoid cramping and to avoid getting the guts bubbling. The Spartan races that I did were a little bit shorter than the Tough Mudders that I did. The first Spartan that I did was about 8 miles. I did a Spartan race in 2018 with my wife. That was, I think, 13 miles. That one just sucked. Before I get too far ahead of myself. So I did the Tough Mudder in October of 2012, and then I did a Spartan in April of 2013, just 6 months later. I was still in shape. I did a really good job on that one, and that was a little bit shorter too. The next Tough Mudder I did was in September of 2014, and the wife and I trained for that one. Our son was already born, so there wasn't a whole lot of like us going out and going running and stuff together. We'd go on walks with the stroller and whatnot, but a lot of our exercise was nightly, and we'd do 30 minutes of aerobics just in the bottom floor of our condo that we were living in at the time. And we did a pretty good job. We had a good showing at that one. And then I did another Tough Mudder the following October in 2015. There was another one in Vegas. And I weighed about 215 for that one. All these other ones, I was around 205, maybe 200, a little bit less for the first one, obviously. But I was doing pretty well on my weight. By the third Tough Mudder that I did, the 4th mud run overall, by this point we had 2 kids, and my schedule was a little bit more demanding, and I just didn't want to be out of the house so much. And so I didn't train as much, consequently. And I was a little bit less in shape for that one, and suffered for it. And then come 2018, the wife and I both signed up for a Tough Mudder in Utah where we were living, and I had no time to train cardio on that one, and I was in the truck for 60 hours a week that summer. That was my 10,000 mile summer. Like, I wasn't out over the road. I was just doing so much behind the wheel work and not really burning at all and not counting my calories again, and I ended up being 230 pounds and thinking, I can tank this, I can do it. I have not performed more poorly on any of these mud runs than I did at that one. I was 40 pounds heavier than the first mud run that I did, and it showed in the pictures. Like, I was just in bad shape, and that one kicked my butt. In the following year, I managed to get back down to around 190 for a little while. Then my job changed again, and I did what I could to kind of stay on top of it. Right now, I'm sitting pretty at about 215 again, but this year I'm going back on the calorie counting regiment, which it just seems to be the thing that works. Again, it's not fun, it's not sexy, I don't like it, but as long as you count like 90% of the time, You can have your weekends where hey, you go out with friends and just don't go crazy nuts and overdo it, but your body is an engine, and you put too much stuff into it, it's going to stick around. And would that it could be a little bit simpler than that, but alas, here we are. So if you got a chunk of poundage to lose, count for a while, get yourself to a comfortable threshold, and then worry about a maintenance amount. Just keep an eye on it. Russell M. Nelson, for his entire life, especially his adult life, and he's 100 years old now, it's been a daily practice for him to weigh himself every day. And if he's up a pound the next day, he dials it back on the food for a day or two. Nothing drastic, but he's dialed in on what he's eating. He monitors that. And if you measure your intake, then you'll improve your overall results. That's been my experience, my observation. Unfortunately, in this day and age, it does require effort to take that off and keep that off. And if you're an exotic eater, or you just like the taste of food like most Americans do, I count myself among them, it's going to require some adjustments and some discipline, but it is doable. And I believe in you, Peter Pan. Anyway, hit me up if you got questions. Drive safe. See you out there.